Welcome back. For the first time in Nigeria's recorded history, nearly all the state government's finances went to a tailspin in 2016. No thanks to the broad economy that suffered from massive oil production and price shocks, including steep decline in revenues from taxes, import duties, and Naira's nearly 40% fall in value. As the Buhari's administration grows, so also nearly 27 states of the Federation. Salaries were delayed, pensioners disappointed, and contractors unpaid. Now, the state of the affected states also impacted their bank loans and other debt repayments. To cushion the effects of the economic crisis for the states, the Buhari's administration carried out 4 relief programs of cash disbursement, bank loans, restructuring, waiver on Federal Accounts Allocation Committee deductions, and repayments on foreign debt servicing overcharge. Now, the new year 2017 is starting off, however, with the news that the federal government is supporting states with a 510 billion naira fiscal stimulus plan called the Budget Support Program. So let's review the state of the state governments, where they are and where they're heading. Joining us for this conversation is Gabriel Idahosa, Economic Policy Analyst and CEO at UHY Maji & Co. Good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us in the program.
Good morning, Harriet.
So, quite a very lengthy introduction just for us to get a sense of how the states were in 2016. But give us a brief overview of the state of state governments in 2016. Did it cover most of what I said?
Essentially, it did. Most of the states, except perhaps 2, were able to pay salaries regularly. That's the minimum you expect as an indication of the economic health status of a state in Nigeria. So when you have states that are not able to do that very basic function of paying their own employees, then clearly it signals that there are a lot of other problems that are just popping up because it has got to that stage. So it hasn't really changed for most of last year, and it's also we are seeing it as we enter this year, that most of the states simply cannot pay their employees. And the federal government is having to give them various sorts of support just to pay salaries, not to improve services, just to pay their employees. So if it's that bad, then there's nothing you can describe as worse than that.
But for companies who are not able to pay salaries, those companies pay salaries and other emoluments to their staff, and of course keep their businesses running. Such companies will be said to be declared insolvent.
Yeah, they will. But the thing is, you can't declare a state insolvent now, because who will sell the state? If a company is insolvent, you can sell it. You can get the regulatory authorities to seize a bank or a company. The Corporate Affairs Commission can take over an insolvent state, or the NICOM can take over an insolvent insurance company. But the federal government cannot take over a state that is insolvent. So that's the real issue you have with government. You cannot declare a state insolvent and seize the state and say you want to run it. Not even the National Assembly can do that.
But which is the reason why the federal government continued to bail out 4 times last year.
Yes.
But how effective were the various bailouts to the states?
The fact that you have to do it again and again means that you haven't really been effective. It's effective when one bailout enables a state to stabilize, generate enough income from its own resources, and continue to pay thereafter. But if it gets the bailout to pay for 2 months and the 3rd month is going back to federal government to say, I need more money, then it will never really get out of it.
Now, I talked about the federal government concluding an arrangement to assist states in funding their budgeting plans with about 510 billion naira fiscal stimulus plan known as a Budget Support Program. How sustainable is this, judging by where the states are coming from 2016?
Well, you cannot sustain it from the federal support. You can only sustain the states from their own effort. You will only be able to help the state to help themselves. If, for example, a state has, let's say, 20% of its total budget from internally generated revenue, and is able to increase that to 40, 50, 60% year on year, then it will begin to free itself from the need to get federal support. But if states are still doing 20%, 25% internally generated revenue, and 70% from the federal government, then they will never, ever get out of it. So we are really talking about how states should begin to become self-sustaining and the discipline to manage their expenses. If a private company has this situation, it will probably fire a lot of staff. But a state cannot fire staff without the workers' union, the civil service union going up in arms to say, no, you can't fire us. We are not the cause of your problem. So the state are caught in that situation where they can't fire staff, they must pay staff, and they have not been able to reduce significant excesses by political appointees. You will expect that states will say, okay, rather than have 15 commissioners, we can do with 5 commissioners. Rather than have 200 special advisors, special assistants, whoever, we can do with maybe just 10. So it takes the state to put its house in order, look at what you can afford, cut down on expenses that you really don't have to. You talk about governors going around with 20 cars, 30 cars and in a convoy, and they can't pay salaries. And where is the money coming from to keep those people when you cannot pay salaries? So top-down, state governments have to look at living within their means. If you can only afford 5 commissioners, there is no rule that says you must have 20 commissioners because you want to satisfy your political supporters. You have to appoint commissioners from all parts of the state, just to make everybody happy, and you can't pay them. And then every commissioner has an army of assistants, special executive assistant, that assistant, this assistant, and those assistants have their own assistants. So you just pile up a bureaucracy on very little income. And
I remember that the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, actually said that most states should begin to look at getting an efficiency unit